Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Shabbat shalom.
All right. All right, so we come to one of the most important stories in the entire Torah, Shirat Hayam, crossing of the sea. And I wanted to read it together first, if that's okay. Because since we're not in the synagogue where we read it right now, in about 5 minutes, we're going to read it here.
Are you reading it this week?
Oh, don't we sing Az Yashir?
I don't know. Do we do it when you do the triennial? Do you do it all the time?
Always do, yeah. Yeah, when in the triennial cycle, there are about 10 things that you never skip.
You. 10 commandments twice.
10 commandments, the Tochachot. For you? Oh,
For you, we have.
For you? Okay, I don't know. For other people, no. Put them over there.
Where do you want me to put it?
Wherever Judy says it.
Okay.
Wherever Judy says. Okay, so if you have the Yitzchayim Chumash, we're on page 403.
406. That's where I should.
403. 403, 403, 403.
What are the other things that we always do?
The 10 Commandments, to think about the rest, yeah.
This, obviously.
This, yeah, there are a couple other things, yeah.
All right.
Race sheet.
Only now.
No, actually,
No, we
no,
don't.
no.
But we do it on Simchas Torah. I mean, when we
Okay, but that's
start
not what we're
We're
talking.
talking about
We're
Shabbat.
talking about when you change a triennial, yeah. Yeah, okay. We're gonna read from our Parsha B'Shalach on page 403. Let's start on,
Chapter and verse.
I don't know, whatever chapter you want.
14,
1412. We're on 14.
1312,
Well, I'm on 1412. You can be on.
1317.
I'm on 1412. You can be on whatever you want.
14.
We're not starting at the beginning.
Well,
Where's 13?
there's 14 down here.
Okay, all right.
Here.
Now can we come together?
Yes.
We are in the middle of the story. I want to actually start at the sea. And I want to start at the crossing, if that's okay. Will someone read in English? Beginning on the top of the page, if you have our Chumash, it's page 403. What have you done to us?
I'll read.
Okay,
It's not 14.
Oh,
I know.
14, 11.
And a half.
11.5, yeah.
14, 11 and a half. All right.
What have you done to us, taking us out of Egypt? Is this not the very thing we told you in Egypt, saying, let us be, and we will serve the Egyptians? For it's better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness. But Moses said to the people, have no fear. Stand by and witness the deliverance which the Lord will work for you today. For the Egyptians for whom you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will battle for you. You hold your peace.
Okay, anything we learned from this so far? Who's speaking?
People.
The people. They're talking to Moses, right? And then Moses responds. What's Moses' response to the people?
Have no
Think they're
fear.
gonna die? Have no fear. Why?
Have faith in God.
Have faith, because what's God gonna do?
He'll fight for you.
God is gonna fight for you in battle, right? And what's gonna happen to all the Egyptians?
They'll die.
Gone, gone, gone.
They're gonna die. Okay. All right, let's see if it happens. Keep reading.
Then the Lord said to Moses, why do you cry out to me? Tell the Israelites to go forward, and you lift up your rod and hold out your arm over the sea and split it, so that the Israelites may march into the sea on dry ground. And I will stiffen the hearts of the Egyptians, so that they go in after them. and I will gain glory through Pharaoh and all his warriors, his chariots and his horsemen. Let the Egyptians know that I am the Lord when I gain glory through the Pharaoh, his chariots and his horsemen.
Okay, so what does God say to Moses?
Go
We'll
forth.
take care of you.
Tell the people.
Yeah, and God actually has a plan, right? Moses, you're gonna do this, and the Egyptians are gonna do that, right? God lays out a plan. Does the plan involve Moses?
Yes.
Okay, this is very important. What?
As a leader,
As a leader, lifting his staff, right? Right, this is an important part of the story. Is it? Well, I'm gonna ask you in about 10 minutes. I'm gonna ask you if it's an important thing. Okay, keep going, Jackie.
Okay, the angel of God, who had been going ahead of the Israelite army, now moved and followed behind them. And the pillar of cloud shifted from in front of them and took up a place behind them. And it came between the army of the Egyptians and the army of Israel. Thus there was the cloud with the darkness, and it cast a spell upon the night, so that the one could not come near the other all through the night.
Okay, what does that sound like?
Eclipse, plague of dark.
A ninth
The
plague,
ninth plague, yeah.
right? So I don't know how closely you've read this story lately and you'll remember this, right? So number one, the darkness is described as an angel, right? There's an angel that is accompanying the Israelites as they are escaping. And in the beginning, the angel was in front of them, right? Was sort of guiding them. And now the angel has gone behind them. And what's the specific thing that this angel is doing? How's the angel protecting them?
Casting a spell.
Casting a spell of darkness so that the Egyptians can't see at all, right? Reminiscent of the ninth plague.
Sounds like almost Photoshop.
Photoshopping, AI. Okay, I don't know. Yeah, but
was
that's
a
the
fog.
protection. Yeah,
It was the fog we had the other day on Thursday morning.
yeah, like the fog we had.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
wasn't that bad.
Yeah, but right, this is the grand protection that the angel is doing is darkness. Could an angel have done other protection too? And not just darkness?
Yeah.
Could have, but this is what it chose to do.
Yeah, right. We're just putting it out there. Okay, keep going, Jackie.
Then Moses held out his arm over the sea, and the Lord drove back the sea with a strong east wind all that night and turned the sea into dry ground. The waters were split, and the Israelites went into the sea on dry ground, the waters forming a wall for them on their right and on their left. The Egyptians came in pursuit after them into the sea, all of Pharaoh's horses, chariots, and horsemen. At the morning watch, the Lord looked down upon the Egyptian army from a pillar of fire and cloud and threw the Egyptian army into panic. He locked the wheels of their chariots so that they moved forward with difficulty. And the Egyptians said, "Let us flee from the Israelites, for the Lord is fighting for them against Egypt."
Okay, right. So Moses lifts up the rod. What happens?
Sea part.
He splits. There are literally walls of water, one wall on the one side, one wall on the other side, and the seabed, which should have been wet still because, water's been there for thousands of years, right? Magically dry, so it's easy to cross so that the Israelites won't fall and trip in the mud, right? And then the Egyptians come through and we're going to get there, Jackie.
They get stuck.
They get stuck. Right? So it turns to mud, they get stuck, and then keep going.
Then the Lord said to Moses, "Hold out your arm over the sea, that the waters may come back upon the Egyptians and upon their chariots and upon their horsemen." Moses held out his arm over the sea, and at daybreak, the sea returned to its normal state, and the Egyptians fled at its approach. But the Lord hurled the Egyptians into the sea. The waters turned back and covered the chariots and the horsemen. Pharaoh's entire army that followed them into the sea, not one of them remained. But the Israelites had marched through the sea on dry ground, the waters forming a wall for them on their right and on their left.
A couple more sentences and then we'll get
Thus
there.
the Lord delivered Israel that day from the Egyptians. Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the shore of the sea. And when Israel saw the wondrous power which the Lord had wielded against the Egyptians, the people feared the Lord, and they had faith in the Lord and his servant Moses.
Okay, right. So Moses lifts his hands, the waters come down, the Egyptians are killed, the Israelites are safely on the other side, and all is, happy and they lived happily ever after,
Yeah,
right?
Right up until Amalek.
Yeah,
I think the most, I'm sorry,
Okay.
I think the most prominent visual feedback for the Israelites was that they saw the Egyptians dead at the line of the sea.
yeah. By the way, they'd also seen the Egyptians dead in the 10th plague, right? So
Yeah.
there was the darkness and death, and there's a parallel of darkness and death here, okay? Yeah.
That's where I was going.
Yeah,
Also,
Ivan?
If I can say, just as it was for Pharaoh in the last few plagues, God is continuing to harden his heart.
Yes,
He's controlled, it's like his will is not there. I mean, otherwise, how could someone be so foolish to do this as a leader after suffering such horrendous plagues? But it's God's war. It's God's triumph. And and it's a little bit ambiguous. I mean, in one of these verses earlier, they talk about an agent of God or a messenger or an angel, but that's ambiguous because
yeah, and save that because we're gonna look next and it's gonna be a question of who's actually acting here. And if you remember, the Haggadah talks a lot about angels, right? The Haggadah, the angels have a lot of active involvement in what happens at the Song of the Sea. Yeah, Nina and then Ron. Yeah.
At the first,
Oh, sorry. And then Judy.
no, I was. At the end of the paragraph on the very top, 405, the last line of the paragraph.
Yeah.
Where the Lord is fighting for them against Egypt. Now in the Hebrew, it's Adonai, but do they call our God the Lord, the Egyptians, rather than your God is fighting?
That's a good question, right?
And I don't know with the Hebrew, how.
Right, so it's a question of why are the Egyptians calling God Adonai,
Yeah,
right? Yeah, I don't know if that's just because this is the Jewish version of the telling, right? Right, so remember, this is the Jewish version of the telling, so maybe they're using the name, I don't know. That's a good question,
right.
right?
Because just the way they would.
Right, I don't know,
places.
if there was an actual Egyptian account of this, I don't know if they would say, I don't know, right?
There are
Yeah.
other places where non-Israelites called our God. I mean, like Amalek.
Adonai though?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Abimelech. I
I mean, it's a
also.
good question.
I didn't mean Amalek.
Yeah, but Abimelech is like a
And
friend.
there were others. I mean, I think.
Abimelech's like a friend.
But what I was gonna say is, I found it interesting that to split the sea, Moses raised his hands, and to put the sea down, to put the sea back together, he raises his hand.
Yep.
And I'm thinking, well, okay, so you raise your hand, you have no idea what's gonna happen. I mean, there are other cases where when they're fighting, he raises his hand and they're winning, and they
Yep.
lowers his hand and they stop winning.
Yep. And there are times when he does things and nothing happens.
Right. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so it's kind of like, well, you don't know what's gonna happen.
Yeah, although it is the
When you say
culmination
that,
of,
you don't know what's gonna
it's the
happen.
culmination of the plagues, which started with something that happened with the staff, right? Right, the staff that turned into the snake.
Oh, well, I don't consider that one of the plagues, but
Well,
yeah.
I'm saying
That's pre-plague.
but the plague narrative, yeah. Yeah, the staff has a prominent place in the plagues narrative.
If it doesn't say anything about the staff, it just says his arms. He's like the other.
Somewhere it says he has a rod in it, yeah. Yeah, all right, so this is version, I don't know if you know, there are two versions of this. Jackie just read version 1 for us. Now we're gonna read version 2, which is chapter 15. This was the narrative version. Now we're going to read the poetic version. Very common in biblical literature when there is something dramatic, especially a rescue, that afterwards there is a poetic retelling.
We still have that today. I
We
mean,
still have
the
that today.
Odyssey. You have the Odyssey, for
Yeah, I
example.
wouldn't call the Odyssey today, but yeah.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying it's something that today I don't know, today we have a song and a story and different people
Yeah,
like
of course.
songs.
Listen, I mean, I am listening to 100 songs that have been composed in Israel since October 7th. In fact, one of my Spotify playlist channels is all the songs that have been written following October 7th. So, right, that's I mean, right, it's similar.
And they did
Right,
it
and think about post 9/11, right? Bruce Springsteen wrote a song, and right, all the people that wrote, there was that song Hero that was like, became the song that everyone listened to, right? So, yeah, right, following traumatic, both positive and negative incidents, right? It's very common to have song.
Naomi Shamir and Yerushalayim and all of
Yeah, Naomi Shemer, thank you. Yeah, all right, all those, right? Lu Yahi, right, go down the list, right? Okay, so Jackie read the narrative version. Now let's read the poetic version. Who wants to read chapter 15 to us? Larry?
Then Moses and the Israelites sang this song to the Lord. They said, I will sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. Horse and driver he has hurtled into the sea. The Lord is my strength and might. He has become my deliverance. This is my God, and I will enshrine him.
Keep going.
The God of my father, and I will exalt him. The Lord, the warrior, Lord is his name. Pharaoh's chariots and his army he has cast into the sea, and the pick of his officers and drowned in the sea of reeds. The deeps covered them. They went down into the depths like a stone. Your right hand, O Lord, glorious in power. Your right hand, O Lord, shatters the foe. In your great triumph, you break your opponents. You send forth your fury, consumes them like straw. At the blast of your nostrils, the waters piled up. The floods stood straight like a wall. The depths froze in the heart of the sea. The foe said,
I'm going to pause you right here. I'm going to pause you after 8. Okay. So far, we have the beginning of the story of the splitting of the sea, correct? Okay. By whose hand does the sea split? Moses lifting his hand up? According to this poetic version.
Lord.
God's right hand, right? And if you remember from, I think the version that Jackie read, or maybe it was earlier, it said the water split because of a strong east wind,
Yeah.
right? Right, you read that, strong east wind. Is there a strong east wind here?
No.
No.
What caused the waters to split?
God,
Right hand.
Not just hand, but at the blast of your nostrils. What does that mean?
That's the east wind, west wind.
It doesn't say that. Here it says God breathed really strong through God's nose. Literally, that's what it says.
What is the
Sounds
wind?
like the
Wind is
creation
blowing.
story.
Yeah, right.
Maybe
That's
not
creation of
just
humanity.
names.
The Ruach, God's Ruach, that splits the dry.
Yeah, and that's the Hebrew word. If you look at verse 8 in the Hebrew, Ruach apecha, right? Right, the breath blast from your nose. Yeah,
does it make sense that the name of the Red Sea is Yam Suf in Hebrew, which would be in English, the Sea of Reeds, and then it turns into the Red Sea instead of the Reed Sea?
yeah, the Red Sea is actually a mistranslation.
Actually, I'm not even sure.
It's not there is a Red Sea, we know that geographically, right? It's not this, right? It was the Reed Sea, which then became Red Sea.
I was actually thinking that it's not Yam Suf, but Yam So.
Yeah,
That was the end of the world that they knew.
could be. Yeah, I don't know. The rabbis debate like how big this actually was or wasn't. Yeah. Yeah, okay. Any other comments from what Larry has read so far in the poetic version. How is God described here?
Full of fury.
Full of fury. God actually is given a title. What's God's title?
The warrior.
Right? Ish Milchama. Ish Milchama, by the way, right? What does Ish mean?
Man of
war.
Man of war, right? Right? God is man of war. By the way, if you remember from Moses's initial answer to the people, it was, remember he said, God will fight for you.
Yeah.
Right? God will fight for you. That's what he said, right? And that's what you questioned, right? Right? God will fight for you, right? And here, right, God is described as Ish Milchama, man of war. Is that how we always think of God? Like if I'm praying, right? In half an hour, we're going to be praying in the sanctuary. Is that what we're going to be praying for? God, man of war?
Well, the prayer for Israel.
Prayer for Israel, but yeah,
But a lot of places he's
But not,
Kamot.
but not normally, no.
yeah, yeah,
When you
but
Usually, if you think of him as strong, you're thinking of Sword Yisrael as a rock that's steady. If you're not thinking of him as peaceful, you're thinking
Yeah.
of steadiness.
yeah, not in war though.
No, no.
Strength,
Strength.
like inner strength,
Yes.
inner
When you
strength.
have-
Yeah,
When you have poetry, you always use stronger words
yeah,
than you
oh yeah,
do in your narrative.
of
And
course.
They're trying to, it's just like when you're making a song, you have to use a richer vocabulary. A vocabulary with all kinds of images
Yeah,
rather than straight out words.
yeah. All right, Larry.
Does Lord of Hosts, I thought that was more a military host.
Right, Adonai Tzevaot, right, Lord of hosts. So it means one of two things. Right? Well, I mean, right, the Israeli military is called Tzva Hagana Yisrael. Right? So it could be somehow related to that. Lord of hosts is that it is God who oversees the battalions. Right? But it also can mean, Tzvaot could mean, who is God's battalions? The angels.
The angels.
Right, so when you think of the angels, right, it doesn't necessarily mean soldiers, right? It could also just mean God is in charge of the angels, right?
Mhm.
Right, and again, angels doesn't have to be a militaristic idea. Right, in general, when you think of an angel, do you think of a militaristic ideal?
No.
No.
You think about comforting, protect, and I mean, they are supposed to protect us, but we don't think of them in a offensive way, right?
Rabbi, backing that up is that in English, host fundamentally means a large body of whatever they are.
Yes, thank
A
you.
host is a large body of something.
Thank you. Yeah,
People,
by the way, just,
angels, whatever it may be.
thanks, David. Yeah, just if someone on Zoom wants to talk, I know we don't usually say just yell out, but for whatever reason, we're only seeing a couple people on the screen. I know there's a lot more. So if you do want to speak up and we don't call on you, say you have to say something, for whatever reason, we can't see you. Yeah, and then I want to keep moving. Yeah.
What about the Malach HaMavis, angel of death?
Yeah, I'm not saying right there, but that was a specific. It's okay. That was one specific, yeah, the angel of death, right? That was that angel's job. Oh, there we go. Now we see everybody. All right, good morning.
Look at that. Somebody had to sit up.
Yeah.
It wasn't me today.
So, yes, right, but there were angels that had certain responsibilities, just like Raphael, right, is the angel of healing, right? Gabriel, right? Different angels had different jobs. Yeah.
One
Yeah.
of the things, when you talk about music and song being derived, it's interesting because in Handel's oratorio, Israel and Egypt, he translates this almost word for word. And the music works beautifully for it. And everything that's saying, you know, the Lord is a man of war,
Mhm.
just everything. Right hand and
I'll have to listen. I have not heard Handel's yet.
but
Israel and Egypt.
It's
Yeah.
excellent.
Thank you. All right, Larry, you want to read? Now we're on 9. And again, it's right, very poetic, as Sheila said, right? this last verse, right? The flood stood straight like a wall, the deeps froze in the heart of the sea, right? That's very dramatic. Okay, go ahead.
The foe said, I will pursue, I will overtake, I will divide the spoil. My desire shall have its fill of them. I will bear my sword. My hand shall subdue them. You made your wind blow, the sea covered them. They sank like lead in the majestic waters.
Okay, we're gonna stop here. Now, is there this like give and take in the narrative that Jackie read to us that like the foe is saying, I will pursue and overtake you, divide the spoil, I will bear my sword?
No.
No, right? I mean, the Egyptians said, we're gonna get them, right?
Yeah.
Again, overly dramatic, as Sheila said. This is understood as a cosmic battle. The rabbis understand that God isn't battling Pharaoh here. God is like, there's some like supernatural heavenly battle that's going on. And that's sort of what's being described here. It's not just.
Do they think in any way that this is a metaphor for something else? I remember, who was it, Wolpe, who said that the crossing the sea never took place.
Yeah.
But
He didn't say that. He said he was questioning it. He didn't say no. He said it's possible that it didn't happen.
Well, also we say if it's the Sea of Reeds, that's where it's easier to walk through.
That's true too.
This particular part is just, as you say, if it's the battle between God and a battle in
God and evil. God and evil.
Yeah.
Right? This is like evil personified, right? I mean, think about it even now with what's happening between Israel and Hamas, right? Like, and, you know, I don't even want to talk about what's happening in The Hague, but right, basically, right, like they are taking the words of Israeli leaders who are so caught up in the moment, right? Right, talking about this basically like a cosmic battle, right? An existential cosmic battle for the survival of Israel, right? That was said in those first couple of weeks, right? And then claiming that Israel, right, is committed to committing genocide because of that moment, right? And if you read this, right, again, you see like these dramatic state, like I'm going to wipe everything off, right? God is saying, right? This is a poetic, dramatic moment. Okay. Larry, you want to go?
All the Egyptians are destroyed. All of Pharaoh's army is destroyed. And so this is likened to at the time at the beginning when they drowned every Hebrew.
Yep, this is karma.
Male, what goes around comes around.
Yeah, karma.
What's the Hebrew for what goes around comes around?
There is. Yeah, there is. There's yeah.
Sivivon so.
Yeah, it's not Sivivon so. Yeah, there is.
It's
Of
usually
course there is.
translated measure for measure.
Yeah. Oh, Mida keneged Mida. Okay, keep going, Larry.
Who is like you, O Lord, among the celestial? Who is like you, majestic in holiness, awesome in splendor, working wonders?
Right, that's Michamocha, right? Keep going.
You put out your right hand, the earth swallowed them.
The earth, by the way, not water, the earth. And who was the person who got swallowed by the earth? Korach. And it's the same word used here. Okay, keep going.
Your love, you lead the people in your love, you lead the people you redeemed. In your strength, you guide them to your holy abode.
Right, we're already going to the holy abode here, which is
Israel
and the temple, maybe, right? Like we're already like forecasting Jerusalem. Yeah, keep going.
The peoples hear, they tremble. Agony grips the dwellers in Philistia. Now are the clans of Edom dismayed. The tribes of Moab, trembling grips them. All the dwellers in Canaan are aghast. terror and dread descend upon them. Through the might of your arm, they are still as stone, till your people cross over, O Lord, till your people cross whom you have ransomed.
Okay, I'm gonna pause you here for a second, right? Philistines, Edomites, Moabites, Canaanites, they are the four closest enemies of Israel, right? So, right, this is about location matters, right? The neighbors who don't like you heard about what happened to the Egyptians, and they are more than scared, right? They are terrified, right? They are terrified. They didn't have to read it in the newspaper or get a tweet about it or get a text, right? There was none of that then, right? Somehow they heard, they knew, right? And this is where the rabbis do this midrashic extrapolation. If you've ever heard, like every single body of water in the world split at that moment. And even like someone drinking a glass of water, the water split in half. If you've ever heard that, you know, the rabbis say like, this is how everybody knew something had happened.
If this is the people, did they know about Phoenicia and Edom and Moab at this point?
Well, this is a question of like when the poem was written, which we'll get to in a second.
Okay.
Yeah.
They say Philistines did not exist. This was my granddaughter's bat mitzvah thing, and she wrote a whole speech about it. You know, that Philistines just didn't exist yet.
I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure because if I remember correctly, the path that the Israelites chose when they were going was to avoid them right after this. So they existed. The question is, what do they know about them? I don't know. Yeah.
The name or they were part of
The
another.
name may not have existed. And this is a question of when this was actually composed. By the way, if you don't know, poetry in the Torah is considered the oldest pieces of the Torah. If you're going to take our, conservative, more academic, whatever view that the Torah wasn't written by God, dictated to Moses and given at Mount Sinai, but a little more view of it was composed over time. Again, that's for another class and another argument, but our discussion, I should say. But if we understand that the Torah, came over time, at least the Torah our version of the Torah, right? We actually believe that all biblical poetry is actually the oldest living version, oldest, at least untouched versions. And this is dated to 12th century BCE. So it's really old, right? Which means like 1300 BCE. Long time ago. By the way, considered older than what Jackie read, which was the historic, narrative, right? The actual telling of the story. The poetic version of the story is considered older.
But militarily, what's important is that our enemies didn't come to the other side and try and kill us as we came out of the sea. Much as the Israeli war with Hamas can't go on unless some of its allies, some countries will ally with Israel in the sense in which we also will not invade. And
if you have the handout or if you saw the link on the website or in the email, now let's look at the page 2 of what I copied for you. It's from this great book called The Koran Tanakh of the Land of Israel from Koran Publishers. I know those can't see it, but I actually photocopied the front cover. It has the Torah commentary or the Torah translation from Rabbi Sachs, and it combines archaeological, sociological, and history findings that are related to verses in the Tanakh. In particular, this is from Exodus. If you look at this picture, do you see that picture? I'm looking at this page,
Page 78.
Page 80. Page 80. Right, this is an artistic, right? If you can see, this is a artistic from an Italian painter in the 1300s, right? And this goes to what Nelson was saying. The Israelites are on the right, and the Egyptians are on the left, right? The Egyptians are drowned. And the Israelites here, they look pretty strong, right? I'm not
Wait a minute.
not
Who's
sure.
on the right? Who's on the right?
Those are the Israelites.
Okay, so that they're the good people because it's.
They
the right-
safely crossed. They safely crossed.
Because they're right, because they right always is positive.
Right. Right is positive. Again, I'm not sure like they were that had that many weapons and everything else, but they look pretty good for slaves, former slaves, but right, but this is Nelson's idea, right? No one was able to follow them. Right? They got through unscathed.
But no one was waiting for them to come out of the water either.
Yes, but they encountered the Amalekites shortly afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right, Larry.
Them off.
To get across.
Yeah. All right, Larry, finish us off. Sorry, caught you in mid-puff.
You will bring them and plant them in your own mountain, the place you made to dwell in, O Lord, the sanctuary, O Lord, which your hands established. The Lord will reign forever and ever.
Right, by the way, again, like there's some Jerusalem references here again,
Yeah.
right? Like
Mountain.
this is not talking about Mount Sinai. This is talking about Israel and Jerusalem and maybe even the temple, right? Like, which they didn't know anything about at this moment, right? Like, so it's interesting, right? Remember, these are the people saying a poem to God. God didn't tell them about the temple yet, right? It's okay, right? Okay, keep going. We're actually not done. Keep going.
You said,
Larry.
you said the date of this was 1300 BC.
Whoa,
That scared me.
that wasn't me.
The date of this was 1300 BC. What was it? When was the Exodus?
Not soon after. Maybe this is 1200s, 1100s. It's pretty old though.
Well,
I want to know how far.
This is dated, I think, to maybe 100 years after.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, Larry, we're now on page 412 if you have our version.
For the horses of Pharaoh with his chariots and horsemen went into the sea, and the Lord turned back on them the waters of the sea. But the Israelites marched on dry ground in the midst of the sea. Then Miriam the prophetess, Aaron's sister, took a timbrel in her hand, and all the women went out after her in dance with timbrels. And Miriam chanted for them, "Sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. Horse and driver he has hurled into the sea."
Okay. The end. Right, if you know this version, right, there is a very, very short one-liner that Miriam and the women with their timbrels, which is a tambourine, right, lead the people. Okay, so if you want to take a look, if you flip the page, we're on page 83 now. It's the fourth page. Let's see if you want to look in the right. Women's victory songs. There is an entire collection of literature throughout history where women composed victory songs. Why? Because
They have good voices.
men went out to fight and women waited. And when men returned home safely, what did the women do?
Sing and dance.
They sang a triumphant song, welcoming them back in gratitude for their valor and coming home safely, right? Is that what's happening here in Miriam's song?
It doesn't,
That's what happened in here.
It's very short.
It's very short, yeah. So I will tell you, some scholars actually think that the longer song at the sea is actually a woman's triumphant song. And it's then later attributed to Moses. Because this is a long running, again, like throughout history, women have written these, composed the, I don't know if they were ever written, but women gave song when men returned home safely from battle.
Okay,
Right?
what you
So
say-
there's a thought that it wasn't Moses and the male Israelites who composed the first, the classic, the 20-line version, right? But it was actually because this is a exact quote from the other one, right? What Miriam says is a abbreviated one-liner of the entire 20 verses. Nothing is original. It's a repeat. Does that make sense? Like,
It's
I
a
don't know,
Continuation. It's if you can look at it as a continuation.
right? Or it's a continuation, or it's like a coda, a chorus, whatever, like a refrain. Yeah. But I'm just letting you know that, and interestingly, right, some scholars think that the entire song was composed by Miriam and the women.
Well, you have Devorah, you have all the other songs.
Right, that's one of the reasons is, right, what Sheila's alluding to, which is the Haftarah, right? Deborah from the book of Judges, right? There is Shirat Devorah. There's the Song of Deborah, right? After the successful defeat of Sisera.
But also when David HaMelech came back from the Milchama, the
Yeah.
women came out to
Yeah, right. We can go through all the examples, not only in our biblical history, but in other histories. Right, but I just wanted to bring to you that it's interesting, right? We haven't really thought about it. So the question is like, the next question is how was the song sung? If we go into the synagogue in the next 10 minutes, we're going to hear it sung. I don't know if we're going to do that or not, right? But if you remember from other times you've heard it sung, it is a back and forth, right? The reader reads and then the congregation says something and then the reader responds. So the rabbis say that there are three possibilities of how it was chanted. One is that women stood on one side and men stood on the other, and they did a back and forth, the whole thing, not that one liner at the end, but actually the whole thing, it was men and women, even though the Torah doesn't say, Torah says Israel, right? Moses and Israel chanted. If you remember.
When did they chant?
Do you know what I'm talking about? I'll just show you just to make sure. It is 15:1. Moses and the Israelites sang the song to the Lord. That doesn't say male Israelites or female Israelites. It just says Israelites. We're on page 407, first line.
Did they sing it while they were walking across?
While they were walking across, when they got onto the other side, was it men on one side, women responding on the other? Was it Moses singing one line and all the Israelites responding on the other side? Right? There are all these different potential versions, right? I'm just letting you know that we don't know. The rabbis and scholars are trying to determine, and the version that we do when we actually read the Torah, right, is one of these versions, right? That's the one where it's Moses is leading and the Jewish people are responding, right? And that's why the Torah reader is sort of reminiscent of Moses and we're reminiscent of the Jewish people standing. I think it's usually understood that it's after on the shore, right? When we've crossed safely, where this
So
was
that makes
composed.
sense that Miriam would have added this. In other words, she inserted suddenly the
Right, or is it that Miriam, right? Or is it that Miriam, right? After the men sang, the women were so caught up in the moment that they also sang, right? So again, like, I don't know, but I'm just presenting to you different
Rabbi?
versions. Yeah.
Rabbi, if we're gonna speculate like this, because ultimately it's just speculation, I'll throw out another speculation.
Please.
Was this spontaneous? Or did Moshe and some of the leaders, maybe Miriam, write something and pass it out, so to speak, and then various people could lead other groups of people in the response?
Right, it's very possible.
I'm
Right.
gonna propose that it wasn't Moses.
Yeah.
It was Aaron and the Levites, because Moshe was slow of speech, so he couldn't sing.
Although interestingly, people that have speech impediments, singing is like, right. And right, and then there's this also classic question is, right, if the Israelites had to rush out during the Exodus and only bring a minimum of things, why did all the women happen to have tambourines, right? This is like that classic question, right? Timbrels, right? And right, the classic answer.
Trays.
Right, yeah, the classic answer is not that it was trays. The classic answer is that they had so much optimism and hope, right? They knew that they would be at a moment where they would sing and bring music and be happy, that they were ready to celebrate. Yeah. That they were the most optimistic of the Jewish people. Just a couple more interesting things, and then I actually want to look at the Torah before we conclude. If you go, if you go to the first page of what I handed out to you, page 78, which is another copy from the Torah and Tanakh. I'm not going to read it all to you, but there's actually an Egyptian legend of a splitting of a sea and a parting from this king Snowfruit. You don't have to, this is one of those, read it at home. But it's interesting that there is an Egyptian parallel to a splitting of the sea and a rescue story, right? And I don't know how that plays. They don't really go into here how that plays out into, if there's a Egyptian story of splitting of the sea and rescue, how does that play into this? Other than the Egyptians already knew a version of that story, and it's considered older than the Exodus. Right, because it says this is from 16 BCE, right? And the Exodus was after that.
We don't have a problem with that with other things, like on the flood story, there's.
Gilgamesh and everything.
Right, so,
Yeah.
so the question, if there were other such legends, it's still, even if this is a legend.
Right, this doesn't-
This way of explaining how they got out of it.
Exactly, and it doesn't say that doesn't prove whether it happened or didn't happen or anything else. It's just, I thought it was interesting, right? And the rest of what I photocopied for you, and we don't really have time to look at, but I wanted to show you is I always really enjoy looking at the Reform Movement's Union of Reform Judaism's Women's Torah Commentary. And that's what is copied in the next pages, but I wanted to show you in particular, about 7 pages in, page 4, what's labeled as 404, 405, 406. They always have contemporary poetry that's connected to the Parsha. And they have 5 different poems talking about leaving Egypt and the parting of the sea and what Miriam's experience is, and Song of Miriam, and what the women's song would be. And in particular, I'll put your attention to 405, which is the other Shira Rubinstein.
It's not the same one.
I'm assuming Shira didn't do this one, right? Right, but here, right? Here it's actually talking about, the survivor's guilt. It's interesting, right? It's a poem about survivor's guilt, right? Which if in Israel right now, that's a lot of what's happening.
Yeah.
A lot of survivor's guilt, right? Right, carrying the heavy load out of Egypt, right? Which is really interesting and moving, right? How many innocents will die for this freedom, right? Right, so it's interesting, and hearing the horses screaming, they were dying, right? It's a really terrifying and I'm just bringing you something so you can read that. And if you want to turn the page, 406, the Song of Miriam, there's actually a reading in our Siddur that I often do on Friday nights on Shabbat Shira or Shir Shabbat. But I never realized that there was a longer poem. I always, because it's in our Siddur, it starts at the bottom to take the first step. But there's a whole beginning, and it's talking about that when Miriam was walking through the sea, she found her voice. And then that's what led to the song at the sea, is that having this moment of crossing the sea, Miriam found her voice and then led the women in song. So again, read it at your will, take a look. So the last thing I wanted to show you is what the actual Torah scrolls look like. I photocopied for you 3, and then if you want, I have here 2 of them that you can take a look at, but just to walk you through, if you have the handout, this is our newest Torah, the first handout. Sorry, the pages aren't numbered. This is our newly commissioned Gottlieb Torah, which we're using in our main sanctuary in Moskowitz Sanctuary. This is a 2-year-old Torah. It looks like this. If you have this page, right? So it's beautiful, very clean and very crisp, right? If you don't know, this is the way that the Song of the Sea is written in most Torahs. It's considered to be a brick format, brick upon brick. That's what it's considered. And it looks sort of like split seas, right? And the Israelites going through, right? There's a classic way that it's done. If you turn the page over, not as great a photocopy, and I'm sorry. That's this Torah here, which is the Persian Torah that's at least 150 years old that's in our museum display case in the gross atrium in front of the Nickman chapter. I rolled it to Shirat Hayam, Song of the Sea. That's what the photocopy is. And after I'm done, you can come and take a closer look. Interestingly, this Torah scroll is vellum, which means it's deer skin. That is very rare. Almost every single Torah scroll is calf skin, right? It's leather or whatever, calf skin, cow skin. That is deer skin. It's very rare. Don't do it anymore, right? They have to capture a deer and then do a kosher slaughter of it and then prepare the skins. We don't have exact dating on it, on the Torah, but it's somewhere from the 1800s, probably from Iraq.
What is interesting is that the letters in this Sephardic Torah are much larger than in the other Torah that we use.
So everyone can take a look. I just wanted to show you, but interestingly, it's the exact same layout, right? It's the exact same layout, and the letters look fairly similar, correct? What you'll notice is a lot of crowns. If you can see, tagin they're called, right? That's very decorative. Almost every letter is decorated. If you turn the page over again, this is our over 500-year-old Holocaust Torah from Prague, Czechoslovakia, right? We don't know the exact date. We know it's over 500, potentially 600 years old. Right? That's the Torah scroll that's here. And if you look at this, there are even more crowns. And it actually has something very special. And if you turn the page over, you can even see closer. Exactly in the middle of the page of that last page in the packet, do you see the pay, which is the line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, the second letter. Do you see that pay? Yep. What is different about the pay?
Looks like it has a pay.
There's a little curl.
Looks like it has a pay inside.
Of the pay.
Inside of the page. I just want to take your attention. If you just flip back to the other page for a second, you'll notice that there are actually 3 of them here.
That's a pay.
If you look 2 lines below that on the left,
Oh, yeah, I see.
there's one, and then also further down, there's another one. I gotta find
The
it. I
same,
didn't
on the
circle it.
first one,
Yeah, they're,
further down, there are 2
Yeah.
on the first,
oh, they're right there. Pharaoh's name, Paro, line 5 or 6. Right, by the way, there are also funky Zions if you look. If you look line 4 in the middle, right, Zeh, you see there's an extra funky stuff, right? There's at least 4 of these special pays. So let me tell you about the special pay. Now, if you want to turn back and look at the zoomed in version. That is a Kabbalistic way of writing, a mystical way of writing the Torah scroll, which is already known by Maimonides. So it's almost 1,000-year-old tradition done by mystics. That pay has 2 names. So yeah, you told me it looks like there's a pay inside of a pay, right? So it's called one of 2 things. It's either called pay kefula, which means double pay, or pay lifufa, alafa, wrapped pay. Those are the 2 names for it. And what it's considered is every time there is one of these special pays, that means that there is a special Kabbalistic mystical meaning for this word. That there is a very special, deep commentary that can explain this word. There are over 100 in this Holocaust Torah scroll. There are over throughout the Torah. If you roll through, there are over 100 of these special pays. But you'll notice in other places there are a lot of other pays in here. They're just regular pays. So it's not like every pay is this special pay. Right, and it's considered very special. This is considered a very holy. I think this is actually a very rare Torah scroll. As I said, number one, it's over 500 years old in itself and was repaired. But each one tells something interesting. But if you turn back, what is the structure? Is it still that same layout? It's still that same classic layout, right?
Yeah.
The interesting thing is in those online, you can't see, but if you look, right, everyone is handwritten, but if you look, the column next to it is a lot skinnier, right? So this was not, the Sofer, usually Torah columns are standard. It's a standard width, right? This Sofer probably realized he was coming to the Song of the Sea and needed more space. So he made a narrow column so he could give himself enough space to make this very decorative and important reading.
What's the reason for the long, certain of the letters have a very long?
Yeah, extended letters, yeah. So every Torah column, that's not one of these really special things like the Song of the Sea. So like or like the Ten Commandments or the priestly blessings. There are certain ones where, again, there's a special layout, like Larry was saying. Every other column has to be on the margins on both sides, every single line.
It had to be justified.
Has to be justified. Every line has to theoretically line up. Again, this is an older Torah. The scribes had their own ways, right? So these lines probably are not, I can't see underneath right now. They're probably not all justified. But if you looked at this one or looked at the new one, they're all exactly justified and laid out. By the way, now every Torah scroll is exactly the same, right? The Gottlieb Torah or newest Torah is exactly the same as every single Torah scroll. There's like a standard way to write them now. So like now every single Torah scroll has the same exact layout, has the same number of columns, has the same number of lines on each column, and you copy from when a scribe works from one Torah scroll to another. But needs to be justified. That's the reason. So there are only certain letters though, Linda, that can be extended. It's lehaderet, lamed, hey, daled, resh, and tav. Those are the only letters that can be extended. Sometimes they can also extend a final mem, right? Right, and there's a couple other final letters which they can extend, but it's really just lahaderet.
I see it.
Yeah, and sometimes that's tough for a tet.
No, it's tough.
Yeah, that's lahaderet. Tough.
Okay.
Lahaderet. Yeah.
The hay, the top, the race.
Yeah. Okay, that's all I had. I mean, I could spend an hour, obviously. This is one of the most important things. Oh, yeah. So just to show you, if you want to look at the zoomed in version, yeah, and then we'll sort of call it a day, right? If you look at that last page, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Baruchacha, right? Barach, which means to escape.
That has a little.
Yeah, the het is actually, if you look at it, it is two vavs connected by, it's usually a caret. Usually a caret is the way that it's usually done. Here, it's like a bridge, right? So there's all this mystical meanings of like, why is a chet two vavs? I have like a whole book. I have like a 1,000-page book that does all this mystical reasons, but again, this was a mystical sofer that wrote it. And when I had a scribe in the summer that took a look at it, he actually said that this is the way this Torah is written, it's very rare. He's only seen about 20 of them in his life. And he's a sofer that's gone all over the world. And that the scribe has a Kabbalistic, hand. Yeah. So you can see these letters some of them are different than the normal way you would write a letter.
So every chet that is in that particular scroll is that.
I think that's the way he writes a text.
There's a second one at the bottom of the page.
Yeah,
I think that's the way he writes a text. Yeah.
There's a bunch of them if you look at the full page.
And if you become a sofer, there's actually every letter has like 5 ways you can kosherly write a letter. There's not just one way. Yeah, again, it's way the sofer. So thank you. If anyone wants to come and take a closer look at these Torahs, please do so. And have a good day.